All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of our weekly Wednesday live Q&A. As always, I put out a status around 11 o'clock Central Time asking people to ask me questions on whatever topic that I usually give. This week, I left the questions open-ended, and I had some really good ones, so we're going to dive right into it. I am attempting to get my Instagram on my old phone going, but for whatever reason, it is crashing and burning on me. So this looks like it might only be on Facebook this time around. Sorry for those of you who were going to tune in on Instagram. I apologize for that, but we'll get right to it. All right, so Thomas asked the first question to lead us off. And he said, if I could get to it, you could tell I'm not as prepared as I usually am. What has been the most challenging aspect of my contest prep thus far? Thank you for the question, Thomas. Very good one. And to be honest, guys, I think the hardest thing for me right now hasn't even hit yet, unfortunately, because the hardest thing, in my opinion, is going to be staying at stage conditioning for 14 weeks, essentially, because my contest prep from my first show to my last show is going to be 14 weeks, and that's going to be a very hard task. I'm not necessarily going to be 100% peeled for this first one. You guys will see that fairly shortly, but I'm damn near close. And I put up a picture on Instagram today. Maybe some of you guys saw that. I'm almost there, but not quite. You know, my weight's been hovering right around 170. You know, maybe tomorrow I'll see 169 again. But that's going to be the toughest thing for me right now, is going to be able to hold my conditioning. Other than that, I would say, I guess Thomas did say thus far, so I would say definitely the length of this prep. You know, this is 33 weeks into it, and that's no small feat. You know, 33 weeks is a long time. I have not been in a deficit the entire time. A lot of you guys already know that, but just a prolonged, prolonged deficit gets you. It's been hitting me hard a little bit the past, I would say, 2-3 weeks. That just because it's like, you know, the body fat gets low. Sleep's been slipping a little bit. You could tell hormones are starting to get a little bit suppressed. But that's just kind of the natural process when you get to this low body fat. So dealing with those things, just the prolonged deficit, you know, there's nothing you can do about it. It is what it is. And then for me, you know, having to essentially stay roughly stage conditioning for 14 weeks, that's kind of unheard of. I've never personally done it. I wouldn't encourage anyone to do it for that matter. I would never have any of my clients do that. Ideally, what I would like to see, you know, is you just get out your shows, you know, in a month or so, maybe 6 weeks. One of my guys this year, Jimmy, he's actually on the video, or at least he was. He's actually competing in 3 shows in back-to-back-to-back weekends. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, you know, just to get your season over with and be done with. But yeah, being stage conditioning for 14 weeks is going to be very tough for me. So that's probably going to be the hardest thing for me of all of my contest prep. Matt Serkey asked, do you think a natural athlete can put on muscle tissue in a 4 to 5 week period, having already lifted for 10 plus years? So I'll start with that, and then I'll dive a little bit more into what Matt was getting at. So yeah, I mean, we could definitely put on muscle in 4 or 5 weeks. It's just not going to be a lot. You know, you got to realize that as a natural athlete, we're literally scrapping for pounds of muscle a year. So how much can you really gain in 4 to 5 weeks? Not a whole hell lot. You can gain some. What Matt asked next was, and then diet down for a show in like 12 weeks. So essentially what he was getting at is somebody at his gym, I guess their coach claimed that they're going to gain all this muscle in 4 to 5 weeks. That's definitely not true. You might gain some, but not a lot. And then they're going to try to go into a caloric deficit in order to compete in 12 weeks. And I asked Matt a little bit more, and I definitely agree that, you know, they could get as lean as they can in 12 weeks. You know, if everything goes according to plan. He said they're about 12% body fat. You know, they're doing a little bit of cardio, 7 meals a day. So I mean, if they're eating a lot of food, they could potentially get there. But at the end of the day, you know, I wouldn't recommend a 12-week prep really to anybody. You know, not unless it's a bikini competitor who's, you know, 8 to 10 pounds, you know, off the number where they need to be. I definitely recommend longer preps. Now, Matt Jackson, I've been getting a lot of these privately Some people have been hating on it, but he asked a great question, so I definitely wanted to address this. I figured it was coming today, and I'm glad that he went there with it. Matt said, given myself, for example, I haven't done any cardio yet this prep, and honestly I don't plan to. What is the best way you are or you can manage clients ongoing to help them understand it doesn't work like that for everybody? Loaded question, sorry. Yeah, definitely, Matt, a little bit of a loaded question. I have been pretty vocal about me not being able to do any cardio, or me not having to do any cardio, I should say. My food's still being relatively high. And the reality of the situation is that no one's me, right? And I'm not anybody else. So just because I'm eating 300 grams of carbs a day doesn't mean that somebody else will. Just because I don't have to do any cardio doesn't mean that somebody else won't have to do a ton of cardio. Some of my clients have had to do 5-6 cardio sessions a week. Some of my clients have had to get, down sub 100 carbs. It is what it is for each individual. And, just like someone who's, let's say can be 7 foot tall, it's kind of an oddity to see somebody who's 7 foot tall. Well, it's an oddity for me not to have to do any cardio. It's an oddity for me not to have to dip under 300 carbs so far. So I'm definitely an outlier, and that's how you have to look at things. There's certain people who can grow a ton of muscle. I'm not necessarily one of them, but my metabolism is pretty good. My energy expenditure is not all that much. I'm able just to get away with certain things that a lot of people can't do. Now, if you're looking to get to elite level of conditioning, like a lot of us are, you're gonna have to be in a low deficit, and for that, what that means for a lot of people is that they're gonna have to decrease carbs. They're gonna have to, eat very, very low food. Now, what you guys don't understand, at least with my intake, is that I started from a very, very high point. In my off season, I was eating 600 grams of carbohydrates. So essentially, I'm eating half of what I was eating in my off season. So just kind of put that into perspective. I'm definitely still hungry. Like I said, I'm eating half of what I used to eat, give or take. There for a while, I was cruising around 550, but let's just call it half. So if someone is eating 300 grams of carbohydrates in their off season, which is a likely scenario, and right now, they're eating half, which would be 150, that would be a little bit more reasonable. Now, in regards to cardio is a different nature because that's not something that you necessarily can control in the off season. I obviously don't do any in the off season anyway, but some people just take a little bit more in order for them to continue to lose weight. So, for those people who aren't blessed with a good metabolism like myself, obviously there's other factors that I've talked about in previous videos about why I'm able to eat so much, and one of them definitely is my metabolism, so we'll just kind of leave it there. But in order to spur weight loss, if somebody has an average metabolism, if they have a little bit below average metabolism, then what are you going to do? You can't just eat no food. You can't starve yourself completely, so you do have to implement some kind of cardio into that. And that's where some people might have to do more cardio. So just look at it as, the bell curve, right? Some people, like myself, can get away with no cardio. A lot of people in the middle have to do, some amount of cardio. And then at the other far end of the spectrum, there's some people that have to do a great amount of cardio. Not that any of my clients have done it before, but I've heard, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard that people have to do 2 days on cardio. They wake up, they go do their cardio, they work out, and then they do their cardio later in the day again. Something crazy like that. So just like anything else, it's always a bell curve. So understand that. I'm a little bit different in a sense where, I'm not doing any cardio and I'm eating a lot. But that doesn't mean that anyone else, because we're all individuals, right? So, even my clients, for example, although I try not to assign cardio because it might potentially waste a little bit of muscle, and I try not to lower food tremendously, once again, because it is bodybuilding, we try to keep food high, so we try to retain as much muscle as possible. Eventually, you have to start cutting things. And for some people, that does involve getting a lot lower. And the same thing with intake. Let's go back to the bell curve. My intake right now, is on the higher end. A lot of people have to go somewhere, in the middle of the deficit. And then at the very, very far end, some people have to get down to the very, very, very nitty gritty, when it comes to their intake, and they, those are the people that are under 1,000 calories a day, or 800 calories a day if you're a smaller person or something like that. So always remember that one person doesn't set the standard. And I'm not saying here, I'm not selling programs saying that, oh, if you prep with me, like you're going to be able to eat 300 grams of carbs a day. It's false advertisement. I wouldn't think that personally. I would be eating 300 grams of carbs a day. I didn't think that my calories would be at 2650 or whatever they're at right now. But it is what it is. I was prepared to go lower. I'm still prepared to go lower. I'm probably gonna maybe eventually do cardio. Who knows? I mean, I will if I need to. But yeah, I'm definitely an outlier, so you can't necessarily rely on the things that I'm doing for myself to implement for you. Blaine asked a few great questions here, so let's get to those. He said, how do I deal with approach clients that struggle with following a plan and being consistent? He said, for example, if they can't hit their macros within plus or minus 5 grams. So let's stop there. With the first one, with not being able to hit their macros consistently, I mean, like, I don't know why, but it is what it is. You got to be able to, if you're a coach, you have to have your clients hitting their numbers in order for you to responsibly change them and manipulate them and to help them. So if they can't hit their numbers, to the gram or within a reasonable amount, 2 to 5 grams, in my opinion, that's where you have to start making larger changes. And that's what I've done before. If I know someone is not tracking to the best of their abilities, it kind of sucks. But instead of making a 10-gram change, sometimes you have to make a 20 to 25 gram change, because if they're eyeballing stuff, 10 grams, they could easily eat over 10 grams of carbohydrates, and then you're just prolonging that process. So in that case, you have to make bigger adjustments, especially if they're dieting. You might have to cut more if they're not being consistent with their diet. If they're missing cardio sessions or training sessions, I think they just need a hard talking to. A lot of my people don't do that. And if they do, they don't tell me, because they'll know that I probably won't appreciate that. Lack of communication. If they skip reports, unfortunately, at this point in time, like if you miss a check-in with me right now, like I'm not gonna hunt you down. A lot of people, may think that I would do that, but in all honesty, like I hold my clients to a very high standard. A lot of my clients are pro athletes, for that matter, and I shouldn't have to chase after them for a check-in. And then eventually they do end up sending me, their weight if it's the next week or whatever. I always give like one warning, like, hey, I noticed you missed a check-in, like send me your weight. And then after that, it's up to them. And that might be a bad sign that they're falling off, that they're not following your plan. And what I've noticed is if people, don't check in consistently, if it's a reoccurring theme, maybe that's somebody that you don't want to keep around, and that person eventually falls off. And that may sound a little bit harsh. It may sound a little bit stupid to some people, because they're like, whoa, like, why would you just let a client go? Well, at the end of the day, like, your clients have to be able to work with you, and if they're not willing to check in consistently and be honest with you, then it's probably best that you just don't work with them anymore. And that's where I found myself for the past couple of years, is just kind of let the bad ones go, and hold on to the good ones tight. Josh asked, I have one, what are a few key factors to a big back development if you're able to get them in? Thanks. Josh, I've actually been splitting up my back work. I mean, I'm in contest prep right now, so I'm not necessarily gaining any new muscle, but I will continue to do this when I am done with the season. I've split it up to vertical pull and horizontal row on separate days. I don't know. I mean, I can't say from a growth standpoint, I like it. I think it allows me just to focus on one thing, my vertical pulling or my horizontal rowing, if I could say that correctly. So I would give that a shot. And obviously, just make sure that you're contracting, your lats properly. For years, no surprise, a lot of you guys, I pulled a lot with my biceps, like for every back movement. So first and foremost, just make sure you're contracting your lats properly, and then potentially split up, vertical pulling and horizontal rowing. Michael Smith asked, weight training in the morning versus only having one meal in you versus the evening and having 4+ meals. No real preference there. I think a lot of it comes down to mental focus, and I think a lot of that might be like the placebo effect, like, oh man, I got 4 meals in me. If you space your food right, like the night before, for instance, let's say, if you're training in the morning, I always encourage like a very large meal the night before and then have like a small meal in the morning. So that would be your pre-workout meal. So really there's no excuse, to feel worse or whatever. I mean, I've trained first thing in the morning sometimes too. And it comes down just to a lot of mental focus and planning your meals the day before. Lydia asked, when it comes to apparent muscular imbalances, do you find that it's typically a true muscular imbalance, or is it an issue of mind-muscle connection the best approach to correcting either problem? That's a great question. A lot of people actually like that one. And I do think that some of it does have to do with mind-muscle connection. This may be a little bit overreaching, but I do think that actually some has to do with the nerve connectings, because I've noticed personally, and it's in my legs, like I get a much better contraction, or I can contract my left leg better. And this is posing, but I think it correlates to what am I gonna do for my birthday? Compete, dude. I'm gonna be in the middle of my contest season. Joe asked, what am I gonna do for my birthday? Nothing, man. I'll be peeled. I'm not gonna be celebrating too much. So as far as muscular imbalances go, I think first you do have to go to mind-muscle connection. Form check, just because form can definitely slip. There also could be some like muscle tightness that you need to overcome. I've noticed that recently with my traps. My right trap is just super duper tight, so I've been trying to work that out. I've noticed it posing a little bit, that it balls up a little bit more. So that might be something to consider. Just make sure you're stretched out good. But yeah, best approaches as far as like if there is a true muscle imbalance, I would start with the non-dominant one, or the one that's smaller. So for example, like if your left arm's smaller than your right arm, always start, if you're doing single arm movements. If you're gonna like curl with your left hand first, and then always match it. So like if you're doing sets of 10, like get 10 with the left and then get 10 with the right. If you only get 9 with the left, only get 9 with the right. So that way you balance it out. If your back's the same way, start with the non-dominant side, the one that's struggling more, so it equates equal volume. Mike asks, can you build muscle without a caloric surplus? So the so-called lean bulk, having adequate protein intake, training, and recovery. I would say so. If you're at maintenance, and this is one thing, I've said this in previous videos before, I don't necessarily like using the term maintenance because maintenance is a constantly moving target. Now, if somebody says that they have found your true maintenance calories, they're full of shit, because your maintenance changes on a day-to-day basis. Your maintenance changes depending on how active you were that day, what muscle groups you trained that day, how heavy you are on that particular day, like how your hormones are. So like my maintenance calories are definitely changing now because I'm in a contest prep. And over the course, sure, if you're in an off season, if you're not in a deficit, if your weight's roughly maintaining, you could definitely gain weight. And I think a lot of people, they're afraid of deficits. They should be afraid of extended deficits, because that's where you lose muscle. You don't necessarily lose muscle when you're in a short-term deficit or in a very, very slight deficit. It's when you're in a prolonged deficit that your body's going to start to eat away at its lean tissue. So yes, you can gain in a slight deficit. Yes, you can gain at maintenance. Obviously, we could gain in a surplus. But what I would truly recommend for someone that doesn't want to gain too much weight, and that is focused on lean gains per se, I would consistently weigh yourself. I would consistently track your intake and not let your weight move all that much. Because as I said earlier in this video, it's tough to gain muscle naturally. And a lot of these guys think that, oh man, I want to put on 1 to 2, 3 pounds a month. Well, if you listened earlier in the video, I talked about how I'm scrapping to gain 3 pounds a year of lean tissue. So if you hold your weight relatively the same for an extended period of time, and that's what I do for a lot of my guys. Like, they may think I'm crazy. For example, like Chris Kane, one of my guys, I don't even know if he's on here or not. He doesn't mind me talking about him. He's worked with me, I think, since December of last year. So let's call that, 8 months or so, 8-9 months. I've let his weight come up like 9 or 10 pounds in that time. And this is full-blown off season, and have we gained some fat? Absolutely. But we've also gained a ton of muscle. Are we in a caloric surplus? Yes. But I think the biggest factor is controlling your rate of gain. And I think a lot of people don't pay attention to that. Obviously they should pay attention to their calories and what their weight does, but their overall rate of gain, you have to watch it like a hawk. So, you don't want to be gaining over a pound a month if your goal is lean gains. Half pound a month, or just no gain per month. Because at the end of the day, your body is going to recomposition more than you think. So you might actually, lose a little bit of fat, gain a little bit of muscle. And over time, it's going to lead to a different look. So that's where, pictures are obviously very important. All right, let's get to some other ones here. Robin Scott asks, as a vegan, what do you recommend adding into a nutritional plan to ensure client is getting all the correct protein sources for growth? And I just had this conversation today, and it was just about protein powder in general. And I said, honestly, you could just eat straight up whey isolate and be fine. It's the most easily absorbed protein that there is for the body. If you just have straight whey isolate, I know that that's not necessarily what you might be thinking as far as how to get my protein in. And I'm not too familiar with the vegan proteins and all that. I know that there's some that are pea and whatever. I'm not 100% sure, but if you could find just a whey isolate, and that if you're getting that much protein in, for a woman, obviously if you're not crazy muscular, which I don't really know this person personally, so I don't know their physique, but you could get a lot of protein in through trace protein sources. So I wouldn't really worry about having to drink an abundance of shakes, in all honesty. And that's all good and well that they're vegan, but yeah, I would just go with a simple whey isolate, or whatever, just to get the the right amount of leucine in, because you are missing out on a certain amount of leucine intake when you are eating just vegetables. So make sure that you have a decent whey isolate. And now that veganism is becoming more mainstream, if you will, I think there's a lot better options out there for protein sources. Matthias also asked, how do I determine if someone should front load or backload their carbs on the last week of contest? That involves a lot of how they respond to their high days. I've said this before in other videos, is that I like to practice peaks. So for instance, when somebody gets, pretty peeled, 3-4 weeks out, I'll give them either a back-to-back high day, probably at first, and I'll see how they react to that. And then I'll give them either a single high day, see how they react to that the next week. And then we just kind of make the decision. But it's trial and error, and I think a lot of people don't want to admit to that. But coaching correctly involves a lot of testing, and then by the time the show rolls around, then you just nail everything. Dave asked, are the benefits of core nutritional supplement, core test, or a similar product exclusively meant for days when you're weight training, or does it provide benefits on the days where you're doing HIIT cardio as well? So core test is a test booster. What Dave's getting at is he's saying, would it be beneficial just to take on days where you're lifting, or is it beneficial to take on a day where you're just doing cardio and or resting? So Dave, the way I've always done it, the way I've always understood it, the way it's recommended, is that you take it every single day for 4 or 8 weeks in a row, because it helps boost testosterone levels over time. So is it necessarily going to help with your cardio session? No. But it is going to help you potentially gain muscle from your weight training sessions and help you recover more, help just boost overall testosterone levels, maybe help with a little bit of recovery. So yes, I would definitely recommend taking it for 4 to 8 weeks, and it'll help with everything, overall performance, maybe a little bit with HIIT, maybe it'll give you a little bit more aggression. I'm not going to guarantee that. But yeah, it'll help in general. John asked, can I please talk about rep speed? I always try to do a slight pause, but some pros just heaving weight, it seems is there a place for it? So yeah, I had this conversation today. So great question, John. There is a time and a place to heave heavy weight. For instance, deadlifts. People do tempo deadlifts. Matthias, I'm sorry, he does pause, reps, whatever. But in my opinion, if you're doing like a heavy movement, just get it up. Like a leg press, I'm not gonna screw around on a leg press if it's heavy. Like I'm gonna go down, up, down, up. If I'm gonna bench press like a heavy weight, once again, down, up. Lighter weights, I will do more tempo. I will control the weight a little bit more. John, if you want to go a little bit slower on the speed for your light weights, and then if you want to go a little bit faster on your heavier weights, by all means do it. That's the strategy that I've approached. Maybe it'll work for you. Ben asked, how do I determine when you need to minicut? Let's just go to that one first. I guess he's going to ask a few questions here. Body composition, how are you feeling? Are you sluggish? How long has it been since you last dieted? But you do have to evaluate, are you truly in the need for a minicut? Like, what are your long-term goals? When was your last time that you did minicut? How's your current intake? How much cardio are you doing? And are you in a good spot to minicut? So those are the things that you do have to consider when you are looking to minicut. If some of those answers are not that great, then you have to work on your intake or work on bringing your cardio down or whatever before you go to minicut. Ben also asked, when you're nearing failure on a lift, do you think time under tension is more important to failure, or to pushing your hardest to finish the last rep out is more important? I did have this conversation as well today. I believe in quality under tension, so that may be a little bit different. But I could see where Ben is coming from. So yeah, just like I said, time and a place. If you're trying to bang out a high rep set and you want to squeeze out one more, maybe force it. But if you're doing like a heavy weight and jerking it through may not be the best option for potential injury reasons, I wouldn't recommend that. I would say just like get a good set in and finish it out on top. Ben also asked, what are some ways that you achieve muscular activation earlier in your workouts? Great question, Ben. So for instance, today I trained back. Didn't really put up any pictures of my train, haven't really been taking too much footage of it. But I always do at least 2 warm-up sets for the given muscle group. So, I did like 2 warm-up sets of my lat pull downs, and then I went into it. Now, in other times, for example, let's say my leg workout, maybe it's a little bit more helpful here. I always start out with a couple sets of leg extensions just to get the blood flowing in my legs, and then I'll go to like my squatting movement. I feel that not only does it help like my joints out, but it also helps with the activation, because I find that a lot of time people just don't warm up their muscle groups properly before they start training. So for example, if they just do like 1 warm-up set on a squat and then dive right into their working sets, they're not truly warmed up yet. So I would even go to a separate exercise, like I said, do 2 to 3 sets of leg extensions and then start warming up on your squat, because by the time that you start to get to your heavier sets of squats, you're gonna be 100% warmed up. That is it for the questions that were on my Facebook feed earlier, but now I'm gonna start answering the questions that were in this live video if I could get to them. So bear with me a second. Let's try to get to them. Dylan asked, if the scale doesn't move, but you definitely see that you're getting leaner, isn't it ideal versus getting leaner and losing weight? So yeah, there is some kind of visual progress that we do look for. That's why I do ask for pictures every now and then from my clients, but it's not every week. Not in the off season at least, I'll say that. In contest prep, I will ask for pictures once the show gets a little bit closer, but I do rely a little bit more on the scale. I'm even still relying on the scale right now, guys, because I know that I definitely need to lose some weight. So yeah, I guess that kind of goes to show you, you have to stick with one thing, and the scale for me is definitely a big driver. Rich asked, when is the last time that you had a job or worked for someone else? Pros and cons that you have come across if you've grown your business. So Rich, I don't talk about it a lot, but technically right now I mean, I work for a gym. I mean, I'm a trainer at a gym. I guess you consider that working for myself. The last time that I've had a like office job would be 2015, and it's been a while since I've like had to work for the man or anything. I mean, I do train people at the gym. It's more or less on my time. I mean, I do teach a few classes there, but once again, I mean, that's something that I just enjoy doing. So yeah, I mean, that's when I worked for somebody was 2015, like the spring of 2015. So it's been a good minute. Pros and cons that you've come across growing your business. Pro, like I said, I mean, you kind of do it on your own time. I mean, you have to be all in it. That's for sure. You know, con, just same thing. I mean, time management, like, you know, if you're not all in it, if you're not on top of your business, because at the end of the day, like, I consider myself a one-man wrecking crew, because, I mean, like, I'm the sole proprietor, you know, I'm the one that answers all the emails, I'm the one that's creating all my content, and it's a ton of work, you know, so, I mean, you have to be all in, you have to be 24/7, and I think a lot of people don't understand that, is that when you're an entrepreneur, when you're an online coach, like, you know, you don't punch out. You know, I get emails. I got an email today at 4:30 in the morning. It's not like I responded to it, but I was up, you know, when I see it. So, I mean, I get emails from 4:30 in the morning to, you know, 10 o'clock at night. You know, and time management is definitely a big struggle. And there also is the time where you just have to be like, look, you know, I'm done answering emails for the day. Typically, I don't answer emails like after 9 o'clock, just because like I need some time like to wind down, just so I could get a little bit of quality sleep. And I think that's the fine line that a lot of people don't get, is when to shut off work mode. And I've said this before. Like, my goal was never to have to work like a 9-to-5 job. And 9 to 5 jobs, you know, is 8 hours or whatever. And I work a lot longer than 8 hours every day on my bodybuilding stuff, on my client stuff. So yeah, I mean, maybe I'm killing myself working, you know, 50, 60 hours a week, not to have to work a 9-to-5 job, but at least I love it. At least I do it for the comfort of my home. And obviously this is something that I truly enjoy, that I have a passion for. So yeah, I'm definitely blessed to do what I do. But it is a lot of work, and I think a lot of people just don't see that from the outside. Dustin Scott asked, what does my supplement stack look like during prep, and how does it change as time gets closer? Dustin. Oh man, I got asked this question the other day at the gym, and I guess I'll run down for you. I mean, like, I'll just tell you my shakes right now. God bless America. In my pre-workout shake, I'm probably going to forget something. I have pre-workout, which is Fury. I have a non-stim pump agent, which is Pump. I have salt. I have a non-stimulant thermogenic, which is Shred. I have a stimulant-based fat burner, which is Burn. I have dextrose, ABC, which is BCAs. I'm trying to think. I need to pick up more HMB. I think that's all my pre-workout. Test. I take Core Test, which that's in my pre-workout as well. So that's pre. Intra, I only take ABC. Post, I take a little bit of dextrose, and Pro, which is Core Pro. That's our protein. Throughout the course of the day right now, I'm taking Flex twice a day, which is joint support. I take Burn in the morning also upon waking. I'm taking a glucose utilization agent at my 2 largest carb meals of the day, which is Core Load. I'm looking at my counter because that's where I keep most of my supplements. I'm taking Core Hard, which is a recompositioning agent, hardening agent. What else am I taking? Shit, man. Creatine monohydrate. I take that post-workout. I'm probably missing something in there, but I think that's it. As far as the normal stuff that I take. How will it change? To get to your second question, I cycle on and off of my test boosters, 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off. I am almost done with core test, and I will be getting on Miracle Labs Liberty Balls. No, I do not work with Miracle Labs, but I still take some of their products because I need to get off horse products in order for them to be effective. So that's our sister company. That's the only product I take of theirs. So I mean, that's pretty much how it's going to change. I will get on and off hard at different points in time. Right now I'm only running it for 4 weeks, then I'll take a 4-week break, and then I'll be on it for another 8 weeks to finish my season. I'll be getting on and off load. I have been taking load for like 2 weeks now. I think I have 2 weeks left, so I'll be getting off that for 4 weeks, and then once again I'll run it for the remainder of my prep. Anything else, I have to get off burn at some point in time. I'm only going to run that for 8 weeks. But yeah, too much is going to change. I mean, I have it all laid out as far as like the things that I need to cycle on and off, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not all that much. Dustin also asked, do I cut out artificial sweeteners and flavors during peak week? Probably not. I don't really take too much of those anyway. I mean, I would recommend it if you're someone who takes a ton of them. But if you're someone like myself, I wouldn't necessarily worry about it because I really don't use a lot. Someone who has like low calories and let's say is eating a ton of Walden Farms products, they might cause you to hold a little bit more water just because of all the chemicals and artificial shit in it. So I'd get off that if you're someone who's doing a ton of it. But in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not going to hurt you all that much. I think, let's see here. I think that might be all of them, guys. I'm just kind of scrolling through the comments that came through in the thread. How often do I stretch? Daily, multiple times a day for that matter. I do dynamic stretching pre-workout. So like when before I even start like my warm-up sets, I dynamic stretch. And then afterwards, I static stretch. So yeah, I mean, sometimes at the end of the day, like before I go to bed, I'll do some static stretching as well. But yeah, that's it. So I mean, technically twice, sometimes 3 times, I'll get some stretching in every day. And I just try to keep my flexibility up just in general. Helps a little bit recovery too to stretch the fascia. But that's going to be it, guys. I mean, we're 38 minutes deep right now. I said it would go about 30 minutes. So I do appreciate you guys tuning in, as always, to these videos. Hopefully you learned something today. These are turning into bi-weekly. So, I mean, just because they're a little bit mentally draining on me, not that necessarily today ruined me, but the next video will probably be August 8th. And after that, I mean, I will do a live video next Wednesday just announcing the winner of my giveaway for Core Nutritionals. Just to wrap this video up, because if you guys use my code and spend, for every $200 that you use my code on corenutritionals.com, you get entered into a chance to win a $100 gift card, which that will be announced next week, Wednesday. So next week's live video will be the announcement of who won the $100 gift card. The week after that will be a live Q&A video. Lydia is going to wrap this one up. Says, what is my favorite cereal? Lydia, don't make me say only one cereal, because I like a lot of different cereals. It just kind of depends on the day, depends what my macros are. You know, lately I've been eating a lot of Cheerios. I like me some Lucky Charms. I like me some Oreos. I was huge on Frosted Flakes. You know, I mean, it just depends. Like, I like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, you know, whatever. I like any cereal just about. I don't necessarily like too many chocolate cereals, though. Kind of weird. But yeah, I'm a big cereal guy. A lot of you guys who follow me on Instagram know that I eat Greek yogurt and some kind of cereal concoction every single night. So I will not pick just one single cereal. I really like all of them, but Oreos were probably my all-time favorite as a kid. How do I keep so many in your house at once? I don't. I just keep eating them. I'm actually low right now on cereal. So I've been sparingly using it at night. I need to re-up when I go to the grocery store this weekend. But anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in as always. I hope you have a great night. And I will... Sam, oh God, when will the cereal ball be back? Sooner than you think, Sam. Sooner than you think. Have a good night, guys. Until next time, keep dominating every aspect, and I'll see you guys very soon.